My name is Isabella, and at 32, I thought I knew my family. My brother Marcus was always the golden child expensive cars at 16 Ivy League education trust fund access. I was the afterthought working 3 jobs through community college. But when my tech startup sold for $28 million last month, something shifted. The congratulations I expected never came. Instead, Marcus showed up at my door with pure rage in his eyes, demanding explanations about money that should have been his. That night changed everything I believed about family loyalty. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this wild family drama that completely turned my world upside down, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments. If you are ready for a story about family betrayal that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about blood relations, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this revenge tale gets absolutely insane. Trust me, you will want to stick around until the end to see how perfectly karma served justice on a silver platter. Now let me tell you how my picture-perfect family crumbled in one explosive conversation. The pounding on my door started at 11:30 that Tuesday night. I had been celebrating quietly with a glass of wine, still processing that my little app, something I built in my garage over 3 years, had just made me financially free forever. The acquisition papers were signed, the money was real, and for the first time in my life I did not have to worry about rent or groceries. But when I opened the door, Marcus stood there looking like he wanted to burn down my entire world. His usual polished appearance was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his face was flushed with an anger I had never seen before. $28 million, he spat, pushing past me into my modest apartment. $28 million fucking dollars, and you did not think to tell your own family. I closed the door slowly, my celebration mood evaporating. How did you even find out I haven't told anyone yet except my lawyer and… TechCrunch published the acquisition announcement this afternoon. He interrupted, waving his phone. Imagine my surprise reading about my little sister's massive windfall in the business section. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Something cold settled in my stomach. This was not the reaction I had hoped for. Growing up, Marcus had everything handed to him on a silver platter. Dad bought him a BMW for his 16th birthday while I rode the bus. When college time came, his full ride to Stanford was celebrated with a family vacation to Europe. My acceptance to community college was met with a pat on the head and a suggestion that I should be practical about my expectations. I was planning to tell everyone this weekend at Sunday dinner, I said carefully. I wanted to process it first. Marcus laughed, but it was bitter and sharp. Process it while the rest of us are struggling. Do you know what position this puts me in? That statement hit me wrong. Marcus struggling. He lived in a penthouse apartment downtown, drove a Tesla, and had never worked a day in his life thanks to the trust fund Dad had set up for him when he turned 21. The same trust fund that apparently did not exist for me, though I had never questioned why. What position, Marcus? You are doing fine. You have always done fine. His eyes flashed with something dangerous. Fine, Isabella. Do you have any idea what I owe? What I have invested in, I have been counting on certain family resources becoming available. And now I find out you are sitting on nearly $30 million like some kind of selfish… Stop right there, I said firmly. My money. The money I earned building something from nothing. How exactly were you counting on my resources when you did not even know they existed until today? The silence that followed was loaded with something I could not quite identify. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, and for a moment he looked almost panicked. Look, we are family, he said, his tone shifting to something more manipulative. Family shares. Family takes care of each other. You know Dad always intended for us to support each other. A memory surfaced, something I had buried for years. When I was 12, I overheard a conversation between my parents about college funds. Mom had asked about setting something aside for me, and Dad had said, Marcus will take care of his sister when the time comes. That is how family works. At the time, I thought it meant Marcus would help me with homework or give me rides. Now, 20 years later, standing in my apartment with my brother demanding a piece of my success. Those words took on a much darker meaning. What exactly are you suggesting, Marcus? He straightened up and suddenly he looked every inch the entitled golden child I remembered. I am suggesting that $28 million is more than any one person needs. I am suggesting that family loyalty should mean something. And I am suggesting that there are ways this money could work better for all of us. The way he said all of us made my skin crawl. There was something calculating in his expression, something that made me think this conversation had been planned long before TechCrunch published that article. You want me to just give you money. How much, Marcus? 10 million would solve my immediate problems. $10 million. He said it like he was asking to borrow $20 for lunch. I stared at my brother, really looked at him, and for the first time I saw past the charm and the smile to something uglier underneath. What immediate problems? The question seemed to catch him off guard. Business investments. Opportunities that require capital. What business you have never worked? His face darkened. Just because you do not understand high-level investment strategies does not mean I have not been working. Some of us operate in more sophisticated financial circles than coding apps for teenagers. That stung, and he knew it. My app was not for teenagers. It was a productivity tool for small businesses that had genuinely helped thousands of entrepreneurs streamline their operations. But Marcus had always dismissed my work as playing with computers. Get out, I said quietly. Isabella, do not be stupid about this. Family is everything. You know that. And family shares. But as he spoke, I remembered something else. 2 years ago, when I had asked Marcus for a small loan to keep my startup afloat, just $5,000 to cover server costs for 3 months. He had laughed and told me to get a real job. When I had asked our parents for help, Dad had suggested I ask Marcus, and Marcus had suddenly become unavailable. Now, with $28 million in my account, suddenly family was everything. I said get out. Marcus moved toward the door, but he turned back with a look that chilled me to the bone. You are making a mistake, Isabella. Family loyalty goes both ways. You might want to remember that. After he left, I sat in my quiet apartment replaying every word of our conversation. Something was very wrong here. Marcus was hiding something big, and his desperation suggested it was serious enough to destroy him. That night I could not sleep. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was bigger than a brother wanting to share in his sister's success. This felt like something much darker, and I was determined to find out what. The next morning I did something I had never done before in my life. I hired a private investigator. If Marcus was hiding something serious enough to make him desperate for $10 million, I needed to know what it was before our family dinner on Sunday. Sarah Chen, no relation to any family drama, thankfully came highly recommended by my business lawyer. She was a former federal agent who specialized in financial investigations, and when I explained the situation, her eyebrows raised in a way that told me my instincts were probably right. Family money disputes usually involve more than meets the eye, she said during our coffee meeting. Give me 72 hours and I will have a complete picture of your brother's financial situation. While Sarah worked her magic, I spent the next 2 days in a strange state of suspended animation. I tried to work on transitioning my company to the new owners, but I kept getting distracted by memories I had never examined closely before. Like how Marcus always seemed to know things about our family finances that I was never told. How he had access to accounts and information that were supposedly private. How our parents always deferred to his opinion on money matters, even though he had no real experience managing anything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had been systematically excluded from family financial discussions my entire life. When Dad bought the house, Marcus was consulted about the neighborhood and the investment potential. When Mom inherited money from Grandma, Marcus helped her invest it wisely. When the family business, a small but successful manufacturing company Dad had built from nothing, needed capital improvements, Marcus was brought in to learn the ropes. I had always assumed this was because Marcus was older, or because he was getting his business degree, or because I was busy with my own career. But now I wondered if there was something more deliberate happening. Thursday evening, Sarah called me. "You need to sit down for this," she said. I was already sitting in my car outside the grocery store, but I gripped the steering wheel anyway. "Your brother is in serious financial trouble. I am talking about seven-figure debt to some very unfriendly people. But that is not the worst part." My heart started pounding. "What is the worst part?" "He has been stealing from your family business for at least 3 years. Systematic embezzlement, falsified invoices, phantom employees. Conservative estimate, he has taken about $2.3 million. The parking lot seemed to spin around me. $2.3 million. How is that even possible? Your father gave him signatory authority on business accounts when he turned 25, supposedly to prepare him for eventually taking over. But instead of learning the business, he has been bleeding it dry. The company is about 6 months away from bankruptcy, and your parents have no idea." I could barely breathe. "My parents do not know. From what I can tell, your brother has been cooking the books expertly. Your parents see financial reports that show steady profits and growth. The reality is that the business is hemorrhaging cash. They have defaulted on several loans, and there are liens against the property they do not know about." The pieces started falling into place with horrible clarity. Marcus demanding $10 million was not about sharing family wealth. It was about covering up the biggest betrayal imaginable. He was not just stealing money, he was destroying the business our father had spent 40 years building, the business that was supposed to support our parents in their retirement. "There is more," Sarah continued. "The people he owes money to, these are not traditional lenders. These are private investors with very little patience for delayed payments. I found records of increasingly threatening communications. Your brother is scared, and scared people make dangerous decisions." "What kind of dangerous decisions?" "The kind where $28 million starts looking like a solution to all his problems." "Isabella, you need to be very careful here. People have done a lot worse for a lot less money." After I hung up, I sat in my car for 30 minutes trying to process everything. My golden child brother, the one who had been groomed to take over the family legacy, was actually a criminal who was about to destroy everything our parents had worked for. But more than that, I realized this had never been about family loyalty or sharing success. This was about Marcus seeing my money as his salvation, and I had no doubt that if I gave him $10 million, it would disappear into the black hole of his debt without saving anyone. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting Marcus or telling my parents immediately, I was going to let him hang himself. But I was also going to make sure that when the truth came out, there would be consequences for every single person who had enabled this situation. I called my lawyer first thing Friday morning. "I want to set up a trust," I told him. "Something complicated and bulletproof. I want to make sure my money cannot be touched by anyone but me, no matter what kind of family pressure or legal maneuvering happens." "Are you expecting legal challenges to your assets?" "Let us just say I am expecting my family to become very creative about claiming they deserve a piece of my success." Next, I called a forensic accountant. If Marcus had been stealing from the family business, there would be a paper trail, and I wanted every single transaction documented before he had a chance to cover his tracks. Finally, I did something that felt both terrible and necessary. I called the private lending company that Marcus owed money to. Not to pay his debt, but to buy it. "You want to purchase the debt?" the representative asked, clearly confused. "I want to purchase all of Marcus Thompson's outstanding obligations to your company. I will pay the full amount plus interest, and I want all rights to collect transferred to me." It cost me $800,000, but by Friday afternoon, I legally owned my brother's debt. Every single penny he owed to the most dangerous creditors was now owed to me instead. Sunday dinner was going to be very interesting. But first, I had one more call to make. Sarah had mentioned that Marcus had been falsifying employee records to embezzle money. That meant there were real people whose names had been used illegally, and some of those people were probably completely innocent of any wrongdoing. It was time to start building an army of people who had been hurt by my brother's choices. Because when the truth came out, I wanted to make sure justice was not just served, I wanted to make sure it was absolutely devastating. Saturday morning, I started making calls to the phantom employees whose names Marcus had used to embezzle money. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. The first number I called belonged to Maria Gonzalez, a single mother who had worked for our family business 5 years ago as a part-time bookkeeper. When I explained who I was and asked if she was still receiving payments from Thompson Manufacturing, her confusion quickly turned to anger. "I have not worked there in 3 years," she said, "but I have been getting tax documents saying I earned $40,000 last year from your family company. I kept calling to tell them there was a mistake, but Marcus always said it was just a paperwork error that would be fixed. Maria, you have been paying taxes on money you never received. Every year for 3 years. I could not afford a tax attorney to fight it, so I just paid. It nearly bankrupted me." I felt sick. Marcus had not just stolen from the company, he had actively destroyed innocent people's lives in the process. Maria was not the only one. I called 6 more names from Sarah's list, and every single story was the same. Former employees who had been used as fronts for fake paychecks, forced to pay taxes on income they never received, unable to afford legal help to fight the system. By Saturday afternoon, I had a group chat going with 12 people whose lives Marcus had destroyed for his embezzlement scheme. But instead of just feeling sorry for them, I had a proposal. "I am going to make this right," I told them during a conference call. "But I need your help to make sure he faces real consequences. Are you willing to work with me?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. These people wanted justice and they were willing to fight for it. Maria became my informal coordinator. She was smart, organized, and absolutely furious about what had been done to her family. Within hours, she had connected me with a tax attorney who specialized in cases of identity theft and fraud. And by Sunday morning, we had legal documentation proving that Marcus had committed federal crimes against 12 innocent people. But that was just the beginning. Sarah called Saturday evening with an update that made everything even more complicated. "I dug deeper into your family business finances," she said. "Your parents are not just innocent victims here. Your mother has been signing documents she did not read for the past 2 years, basically giving Marcus carte blanche to make financial decisions. And your father has been transferring personal assets to the business account to cover shortfalls without realizing that Marcus was immediately moving that money out again. So they are helping him steal from themselves." Essentially, yes, but here is the thing that is really going to upset you. I found a will. My blood went cold. "What kind of will?" "Your parents updated their will 18 months ago. The family business, the house, all assets. Everything goes to Marcus. You are listed as receiving a token $5,000 and some personal items." I had to sit down. $5,000. It gets worse. The will specifically states that this distribution is based on Marcus's demonstrated business acumen and his commitment to maintaining the family legacy. "Isabella, this will was written after your brother had already stolen over $1 million from the company." The betrayal was so complete, so systematic, that I almost could not process it. My parents had not just excluded me from the family finances, they had actively written me out of the family future while praising the son who was destroying everything they had built. That night, I made a decision that would probably destroy my relationship with my parents forever. But after 32 years of being treated like an outsider in my own family, I was done protecting people who had never protected me. I called my father. "Dad, I want to buy the family business." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Buy the business, Isabella. That is not how family legacy works. The business stays in the family." "I am family." "Of course you are, sweetheart. But Marcus has been preparing to take over for years. He understands the complexities." "Dad, what would you say if I told you the business was bankrupt?" Another long silence. "That is impossible." Marcus showed me the quarterly reports just last month. We are having our best year ever. What if I told you that those reports were falsified? What if I told you that Marcus has been stealing from the company for 3 years, and that you are about 6 months away from losing everything? Isabella, I do not know what has gotten into you lately, but these accusations against your brother are completely inappropriate. Marcus would never. Dad, I have documentation. Bank records, falsified invoices, phantom employee records. I have been investigating for the past week. The line went quiet for so long I thought he had hung up. Dad, why would you investigate your own brother? His voice was cold in a way I had never heard before. Because he came to my apartment demanding $10 million and threatening me when I refused to give it to him. He was probably just excited about your success and wanted to share in family planning. You have always been sensitive about Marcus's accomplishments. The casual dismissal of everything I had just told him was breathtaking. My father was so invested in the narrative of Marcus as the golden child that he could not even consider the possibility that his son was a criminal. Dad, are you going to look at the evidence I have gathered? Or are you going to choose to believe Marcus no matter what? I am going to choose to believe that family loyalty means something which apparently is a lesson you never learned. He hung up on me. I sat in my apartment staring at my phone and realized that my entire family had been playing a game where the rules were rigged against me from the beginning. It did not matter what I achieved, what I accomplished, or even what crimes Marcus committed. The narrative was set Marcus was the heir, and I was the ungrateful outsider. But I was not powerless anymore. I had $28 million, a team of people who wanted justice and documentation of federal crimes. More importantly, I had something Marcus did not expect me to have. I owned his debt. Sunday dinner was still happening. My mother had called to confirm, asking me to bring dessert, and to please not upset Marcus about business things because he has been under stress lately. I was definitely bringing dessert. But I was also bringing a few surprises that were going to make this the most memorable family dinner in Thompson history. Maria texted me Sunday morning. We are all ready. Everyone has their documentation, and the tax attorney says we have enough for federal charges. Are you sure you want to do this at family dinner? I thought about 32 years of being dismissed, overlooked, and excluded. I thought about my parents writing me out of their will while praising the son who was stealing from them. I thought about Marcus threatening me and demanding money he had no right to ask for. Yes, I replied. I am sure. It is time for this family to see exactly who Marcus really is. The nuclear bomb I was about to drop was going to destroy everything. But sometimes the only way to save what matters is to completely obliterate what is broken beyond repair. What happens when the golden child is finally exposed for what he truly is? Well, you are about to find out just how spectacular a family can implode when 30 years of lies meet $28 million worth of truth. Trust me, this dinner is going to be one for the history books. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had always been a sacred tradition. Mom would spend hours preparing roast beef, mashed potatoes, and green beans, while Dad carved the meat with ceremonial precision. Marcus would regale us with stories about his latest business ventures, and I would sit quietly grateful to be included. Today was different. I arrived 30 minutes early, carrying a homemade apple pie and a leather briefcase that contained enough documentation to send my brother to federal prison. Mom hugged me at the door, commenting on how tired I looked while Dad shook my hand with the distant politeness he had shown me since our phone conversation. Marcus was already there, looking polished and confident in his expensive suit. He gave me a smile that did not reach his eyes and made a point of complimenting my little windfall in front of our parents. $28 million, he said, cutting into his roast beef. I still cannot believe our Isabella built something so valuable. Of course, now comes the hard part, managing that kind of wealth responsibly. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable, but our parents nodded approvingly, as if Marcus was the wise elder brother offering guidance to his naive little sister. Actually, I have been thinking a lot about responsibility lately, I said, setting down my fork. Family responsibility specifically. Mom beamed. I knew you would want to share your success with family. That is how we raised you both. Sharing is interesting word choice, Mom. Let me ask you something. How is the family business doing? Dad straightened up, clearly uncomfortable. The business is fine, Isabella. Marcus has been doing excellent work managing operations. Really, Marcus want to tell them about the quarterly profits. Marcus's smile faltered for just a moment. Business talk at Sunday dinner. Come on, Isabella. Humor me. What were last quarter's profits? He recovered quickly, throwing out numbers that sounded impressive. Numbers I knew were completely fabricated because I had seen the real books. That is fascinating, I said, opening my briefcase. Because according to the actual bank records, the company lost $160,000 last quarter. But maybe I am reading these wrong. I spread the financial documents across the dining room table right next to Mom's good china. Bank statements, loan documents, falsified invoices, everything Sarah had helped me compile. The color drained from Marcus's face. Where did you get those? He demanded. From a forensic accountant. The same one who discovered that you have been embezzling money for 3 years using the identities of former employees. Dad stood up abruptly. Isabella, this is completely inappropriate. Whatever vendetta you have against your brother. Vendetta. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Maria, are you there? Maria's voice came through the speaker, clear and angry. I am here, Isabella. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, my name is Maria Gonzalez. I used to work for your company. For the past 3 years, your son has been using my identity to create fake paychecks for himself. I have been paying taxes on money I never received, money that your son stole from your business. Mom sank back into her chair. That is impossible. Ma'am, I have tax documents here showing that I supposedly earned $40,000 from Thompson Manufacturing last year. I have not worked there since 2021. Your son has been stealing from you and destroying innocent people's lives to cover it up. I hung up and looked directly at Marcus. His carefully constructed facade was cracking. Isabella, you do not understand the complexities of business financing, he started. I understand theft. I interrupted. I also understand fraud, and I especially understand that you came to my apartment demanding $10 million because you are desperate to cover up your crimes. Crimes? Dad's voice was shaking. Marcus, tell me this is not true. But Marcus was not looking at Dad. He was looking at me with pure hatred. You vindictive bitch, he said quietly. You have always been jealous of everything I achieved. Achieved? I laughed. Marcus, you have never achieved anything in your life. You have been handed everything and you have stolen the rest. The only achievement here is how spectacularly you have destroyed our family's legacy. I pulled out another document. This is your debt portfolio. $800,000 owed to private lenders who specialize in breaking kneecaps when payments are late. Mom gasped. But here is the interesting part, I continued. I bought your debt, Marcus. All of it. Which means you do not owe dangerous criminals anymore. You owe me. The silence in the dining room was deafening. Marcus stared at me like I had just announced I was an alien. You did what? I bought your debt. Every penny you owe is now owed to me, which means I own you, brother, just like you thought you owned my success. Dad finally found his voice. Isabella, surely we can work this out as a family. Family. I stood up, my own anger finally breaking through. Dad, you wrote a will leaving me $5,000 while giving everything to the son who has been stealing from you. Mom, you have been signing documents for 2 years without reading them, basically giving Marcus permission to destroy everything you built. Where exactly was the family when I needed it? I pulled out the final document, the one that would destroy whatever was left of Marcus's world. This is a complaint I am filing with the FBI tomorrow morning. Federal embezzlement charges, identity theft, wire fraud. 12 victims are prepared to testify and we have documentation going back 3 years. Marcus jumped to his feet. You cannot do this, I am family. Family does not steal. Family does not lie. Family does not threaten their sister for money they did not earn. I started packing up my documents. But most importantly, family does not spend 32 years treating someone like an outsider and then expect loyalty when it is convenient. Isabella, please, Mom whispered. There has to be another way. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw someone who had spent decades enabling Marcus's entitlement while dismissing my achievements. There was another way, Mom. You could have treated your children equally. You could have questioned why Marcus needed so much money. You could have included me in family decisions instead of assuming I would always be grateful for scraps. I headed toward the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Marcus. About that $10 million you demanded, I am donating exactly that amount to a fund for victims of financial fraud. In your name. I thought you would want to help people whose lives have been destroyed by embezzlement schemes. The last thing I heard as I left was Marcus screaming at our parents, finally showing them the rage and desperation I had seen in my apartment. The golden child mask had finally fallen away completely. Justice was about to be served, and it was going to be absolutely devastating. The FBI moved fast. By Wednesday morning, federal agents were at Thompson Manufacturing with search warrants. By Wednesday afternoon, Marcus was arrested at his penthouse apartment. The local news picked up the story by Thursday. Local business heir charged with federal embezzlement. And suddenly, my quiet family drama became very public. My parents called me 17 times that first day. I did not answer. When I finally listened to the voicemails, the progression was telling. The first few were angry demands that I fix this mess and drop the charges. The middle ones were confused pleas asking how I could do this to family. The final ones were broken whispers as they began to understand the magnitude of what Marcus had done. Sarah kept me updated on the investigation's progress. The FBI had found evidence of even more crimes than we had initially discovered. Marcus had been running a sophisticated operation using the family business as his personal bank account, while presenting false success stories to investors he was courting for even bigger schemes. He was not just stealing to pay debts, Sarah explained during our Friday meeting. He was stealing to fund a lifestyle that would attract more victims. The penthouse, the car, the expensive clothes, it was all part of a long-term con to position himself as a successful businessman so he could defraud larger investors. The scope of his crimes was breathtaking. The FBI estimated he had stolen nearly $3 million total, affected 18 different people through identity theft, and was planning to defraud several potential business partners out of additional millions. But the most devastating revelation came when agents searched his apartment and found detailed files on our family's finances, including research into my startup and calculations about how much money he could extract from me. Isabella, Sarah said carefully, he had been monitoring your business success for over a year. He knew about the acquisition talks before you did because he had been tracking your company's value through public business databases. The betrayal went even deeper than I had imagined. Marcus had not just demanded money from me impulsively, he had been planning to exploit my success as part of his criminal enterprise. My father finally reached me Friday evening, showing up at my apartment instead of calling. Isabella, please. We need to talk. I let him in, but I did not offer him coffee or a seat. He looked like he had aged 5 years in 5 days. The FBI agents showed us everything, he said quietly. The fake employee records, the falsified reports, the stolen money. I had no idea. You did not want to have any idea, Dad. That is different. He flinched. You are right. I trusted Marcus completely because I wanted to believe he could run the business. I wanted to believe that my legacy was secure. What about my legacy? What about treating your daughter like she mattered? Dad sat down heavily on my couch, looking defeated. Isabella, I owe you an apology that I cannot even begin to express. We failed you as parents, and we failed you as family. It was the first time in my life that my father had ever admitted being wrong about anything involving Marcus and me. The business is finished, he continued. Even if we could recover some of the stolen money, the legal costs, and the damaged reputation we will have to declare bankruptcy and sell everything. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt heartbroken for the innocent employees who would lose their jobs because of Marcus's crimes. What about Mom? She is not speaking to anyone right now. She keeps saying she should have known, she should have asked more questions. The guilt is destroying her. We sat in silence for several minutes. Dad, did you really think I deserved $5,000 in your will while Marcus got everything? His shoulders sagged. Isabella, I thought Marcus would take care of you. I thought the business would support both of you and that he would make sure you were provided for. You thought your adult daughter needed her brother's permission to be financially secure. I thought... He stopped, seeming to realize how ridiculous it sounded. I do not know what I thought. I suppose I never really saw you as capable of taking care of yourself. The casual admission of 3 decades of dismissal was almost worse than Marcus's crimes. Dad, I built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing. I taught myself programming, developed a product that helped thousands of people, and created something valuable enough that a major corporation wanted to buy it. At what point did you think I might be capable of managing my own life? He looked at me with something that might have been seeing me clearly for the first time. You are absolutely right. Isabella, you have achieved more than Marcus ever did, and we not only failed to recognize it, we actively dismissed it. It was progress, but it was 32 years too late. The FBI agent said you bought Marcus's debts, Dad continued. Why? Because I wanted him to understand that actions have consequences. Because I wanted him to know what it feels like to owe someone who does not care about his sob stories or his excuses. What happens now? I had been thinking about that question all week. Marcus was facing federal charges that could result in 10 to 15 years in prison. The family business would be liquidated to pay restitution to victims. My parents would lose their house, their retirement savings, and their social standing in the community. Now everyone learns to live with the consequences of their choices. I said, Isabella, is there anything, any way you could, what, Dad? Ask me for money. Ask me to fix the mess that Marcus made while you enabled him. He looked ashamed, which was appropriate. I am not going to let you lose the house, I said finally. Not because you deserve my help, but because I am not Marcus. I do not punish people just because I can. Relief flooded his face. But, I continued, this is not about family loyalty or forgiveness. This is about me choosing to be a decent human being despite how I was treated. Do not mistake my generosity for acceptance of how this family has operated. Dad nodded, tears in his eyes. How do we move forward from this? I do not know if we do. I said honestly, you spent 32 years teaching me that I was not really part of this family. Marcus spent 3 years stealing from you while you praised his business acumen. Some things cannot be fixed with apologies. After Dad left, I sat in my apartment thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. Marcus was going to prison. The victims of his crimes were going to receive restitution. The family business that had been built on lies was going to collapse. Justice was definitely being served. But revenge was going to be much sweeter. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of a downtown law office, surrounded by people who had become my real family. Maria was there along with 8 other victims of Marcus's identity theft scheme. My forensic accountant, Sarah, had become a close friend. The tax attorney who had helped us navigate the federal charges was wrapping up the final restitution paperwork. Marcus had pled guilty to 12 felony counts and been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The judge had been particularly harsh because of the systematic nature of his crimes and the number of innocent people he had hurt. The final restitution payment has been processed, the attorney announced. every victim will receive full compensation for taxes paid on fraudulent income, plus interest, plus additional damages for financial hardship. The money came from liquidating the family business assets, Marcus's personal property, and a contribution I made to ensure everyone was made completely whole. Watching Maria get a check that would allow her to buy a house for her children was worth every penny. But the real satisfaction came from what I had done with Marcus's debt. After buying his $800,000 obligation to dangerous lenders, I had structured a payment plan that would follow him for the rest of his life. Even after prison, Marcus would be paying me monthly installments until every cent was recovered with interest. The beauty of it was that the payments were calculated to be exactly affordable but never convenient. He would spend the next 20 years being reminded every month that actions have consequences. My parents had moved to a small retirement community in Arizona. I had paid off their house before it could be seized and given them enough money for a modest retirement. But our relationship remained politely distant. Dad called occasionally to update me on Marcus's situation and to express regret about how they had raised us. Mom sent birthday cards with handwritten notes about how proud she was of my success. It was progress, but trust was something that would take years to rebuild if it ever could be. The most surprising development was how many people reached out to me after the story became public. Apparently, my experience of being the overlooked child in a family that worshipped a golden child was more common than I had realized. I started getting emails from people sharing their own stories of family financial abuse, sibling favoritism, and the long-term psychological damage of being systematically undervalued. Some of the stories were heartbreaking, and I realized I had accidentally become a symbol for people who had never been seen or heard in their own families. That led to my next business venture. Using $5 million from my startup sale, I launched the Fair Family Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provided legal aid and financial support for people dealing with family financial abuse. We helped victims of identity theft, provided resources for adults recovering from childhood favoritism trauma, and funded legal challenges against family members who had committed financial crimes. Maria became the foundation's first full-time director. She had a natural gift for connecting with victims and helping them navigate complex legal systems. Watching her transform from someone who had been victimized by my family to someone who was helping others fight similar battles was incredibly fulfilling. The foundation also funded research into the psychological effects of extreme family favoritism, which turned out to be a much larger problem than most people realized. Dr. Amanda Foster, a psychologist who specialized in family dysfunction, joined our board and helped develop support programs. What you experienced was not just favoritism, Dr. Foster explained during one of our planning meetings. It was systematic emotional and financial disinheritance. Your parents essentially trained you to expect nothing while training your brother to expect everything. The psychological damage from that kind of treatment can last for generations. Understanding the clinical aspects of what had happened helped me process my own healing journey, but it also helped me realize how many other people were struggling with similar family dynamics. A year after Marcus's sentencing, I bought a house in the mountains outside the city. It was beautiful and peaceful, and most importantly, it was mine. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, invited only people I genuinely cared about, and created the kind of family environment I had always wanted. My chosen family included Sarah Maria Dr. Foster, several other foundation board members, and a handful of close friends I had made through business networking. We had monthly dinners where everyone was valued, everyone's achievements were celebrated, and no one had to compete for basic respect and recognition. It was everything my biological family had never been. Sometimes people asked if I missed having a traditional family structure. The answer was complicated. I missed the idea of family, the concept of unconditional love and support that families are supposed to provide. But I had never actually experienced that with my biological family, so I was not really missing something I had lost. I was grieving something I had never had. Building my chosen family taught me that love and loyalty are not automatic just because people share DNA. Real family is about mutual respect, genuine care, and showing up for each other consistently. My biological family had failed those basic tests for 32 years. Marcus would be eligible for parole in 6 years, assuming good behavior. I had no plans to maintain any relationship with him after his release. Some betrayals are simply too complete to forgive, and some people are too fundamentally selfish to trust. But I did not spend time thinking about revenge anymore. Revenge had been watching him get arrested, watching him lose everything, watching him face the consequences of his choices. Justice had been the prison sentence and the restitution payments. What I had now was something much better than either revenge or justice. I had freedom. Freedom from a family system that had never valued me. Freedom from the obligation to accept mistreatment because of blood relations. Freedom from the fantasy that my parents would ever see me clearly or treat me fairly. Most importantly, I had the freedom to build the life I wanted, surrounded by people who appreciated me for who I actually was, rather than tolerating me as an afterthought to their golden child. The foundation continued to grow, helping more victims every month. My house in the mountains became a gathering place for people who had overcome family trauma and built successful, independent lives. And occasionally, I would get an email from someone who had heard my story and found the courage to stand up to their own family's dysfunction. Those emails reminded me why I had chosen to make the whole situation public instead of handling it quietly. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to protect people who have hurt you, especially when your truth might help someone else find their own strength. Have you ever been the overlooked child in a family that worshipped someone who did not deserve it? Have you watched someone get praised for achievements while your own hard work went unnoticed? Drop a comment below and tell me about your own experience with family karma, because trust me, the universe has a way of balancing these scales eventually. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama about family dynamics and justice served. And share this video with anyone who needs to hear that blood does not excuse betrayal, and that sometimes the best family is the one you choose for yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth is not determined by how your family treats you, but by how you choose to value yourself and the people who genuinely care about you. Building a life based on your own values rather than other people's expectations is the sweetest revenge of all.